Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to the show. Summer should be a time for beach walks and backyard barbecues, but for those with diabetes or peripheral artery disease, it could be a season of hidden dangers. That innocent stub toe from a flip-flop mishap, yeah, we've all been there. For someone, though, with compromised circulation in their legs, it could lead to a non-healing wound, infection, and in worst cases, amputation. Now, alarmingly, summer foot injuries are often the first sign that someone has peripheral artery disease or that poor circulation in the legs. That's right. Many people discover this life threatening and limb threatening condition only after a minor foot injury refuses to heal. So, today we're going to learn all about this. We're joined by renowned podiatrist, Dr. David Alper, who brings over 3 decades of expertise from his distinguished career, including his work as Emeritus Surgical staff at Harvard's Mount Auburn Hospital and his leadership with the American Diabetes Association. Dr. Alper will guide us through the summer foot follies he's witnessed and also provide some critical advice for protecting your feet when your circulation is compromised. So, welcome, 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 everyone. And Dr. John, my amazing co host, thank you so much for coming in. And
I am.
we're pre
I-
recording the show
We are
today.
pre-recording this. I mean, it's Monday, right? So Monday's the start of a new week,
Gotta
and
be honest.
that often brings the unknown. You never know what's going to happen on these shows. You never know what's going to happen at the hospital tomorrow during a case. We were talking about a case this before we recorded. So I'm just kind of trying to figure out how much alliteration you can provide us with, Kim, regarding feet and follies and flip-flops and whatnot. So I don't have any. I mean, we don't necessarily have to do inspiration today, but I took my favorite chatbot Claude and I asked him to or her, but I think it's a him, to find me some alliterative phrases using the word F and related to feet. So can I read a couple of them? Because these
Are they safe for work? I mean, let's start with the basics.
Yeah, exactly. Here we go, Dr.
all right, all
Alper.
right. So here's
Ready
one:
for it.
fashionable Fiona flavors, fluffy fuzzy foot warmers. Okay.
I like
Um,
flavorful feet.
Faithful friends find fabulous footwear for festive functions.
Oh, okay.
And then here we go. This is right up David's alley because I'm sure you've seen this. Fragile frozen feet frantically fight frostbite.
Yes.
Okay, my work here is done. Mic
And
drop,
you
and I
know what?
will acquiesce.
My God. The
Getting that
antithesis
into
of
the chart
summer,
is fabulous. So,
Yes.
I'm sure, Dr. Albert, you have quite a few of your own, but I imagine that the frostbite is probably the antithesis of what we're going to experience this summer, unless you head up to Antarctica or
Right.
somewhere.
well,
Well, I mean, I imagine, he's probably seen pretty sig and this necessarily isn't PAD related, but pretty significant sunburn. I think a lot of people forget to put sunscreen on there on the piggies. And so, yeah, I'm sure he's seen that. I have.
well, I'll take you back first to what you were speaking about before. Believe it or not, I had a patient about 15 years ago that did present with frostbite in July. Now, how in the world could that happen? Well, because they got a little sunburn on their feet and they actually were still able to feel their feet, and the feet were nice and hot. So they thought the perfect thing would be to put their feet in an ice bath
No.
for an hour and a half. And
Wow.
with circulation issues to begin with, and of
Mm.
course, ice water drives away any hope of circulation being.
Yes, it does.
And the biggest problem, and John, I'm sure you see this in practice too. Patients do what they think is right. I mean, no, very, very few people set out to hurt themselves, but the thought process doesn't go along with the intent, and then they get embarrassed. And so they did this ice thing on a Saturday, but they didn't come to me till Wednesday.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
at that point, the what are chilblains set in and the blistering set in and the beginnings of frostbite set in. And so, yeah, we actually wound up
Well, I
losing
mean, David, right? Like, if you think
face.
about it, the foot or the toes are the farthest distance from the person's brain, and so maybe they're the least thought about to some degree.
Well, yes, they're probably thinking the list. I think that's probably true.
But
Uh, one of the things that's amazing is the wide variety of things that people soak their feet in. And so much of it is from anecdotal information. God bless Dr. Google on the internet. And what's also really kind of scary to me is that patients will take advice from complete anonymous strangers over the advice that they get from sitting in an exam room with a doctor.
Mhm.
And so I've had people soak their feet in kerosene, gasoline, bleach, lye. I mean, I can't even begin to, all things that, by the way, say very clearly on the bottle, keep it off your skin. So,
yes.
Ice water in July was just another of them, these things. And again, nobody's setting out to hurt themselves, but sometimes intent and a little bit of following what makes sense doesn't always go together.
Yeah, we
And
did have it, and sometimes there also is a lack of education sometimes in some areas, especially impoverished areas. We had some patients over in the Philippines that were using bleach to
yeah,
soak their wounds, and that was all they had. They didn't know anything different. Was it doing any good? No, but they still did it, and every single one of them was on deck, for amputation until they found us, and I discovered that there is an Amazon Philippines, and I was able to send a whole bunch of wound care supplies to be distributed to one community. But I hope that it made a difference. I know it did for at least one patient that we couldn't save the toe, but we were able to save the leg.
well, let me take this back to where John brought up a really good point from the get-go, and that is sunburn of the feet. People, smear all sorts of, 50, 75 all over their bodies. But to your point, John, the feet are the farthest part away. And as you get older, it gets harder to reach because they get farther away as you get older. I didn't know you knew that or not.
Yeah.
And so they wind up not putting it on the tops of their feet. But here's the deal. The top of your foot and the top of your hand are the two places in the body that have the least fat. It's basically skin and bones. So when you start getting ultraviolet rays there that start burning the skin, there's nothing to give any extra moisture. There's no fat to give moisture to the skin. And then, of course, you have circulation issues, and your circulation is the only thing that brings water to the skin. So it's very, very susceptible to sunburn and leading to blistering much quicker than like the tops of your thighs or your shoulders or something along those lines. It is crucial if you insist on walking around flip-flops or, God forbid, barefoot, that you get that sunscreen on the top of your feet. And of course, everybody wades into the water. You may not go up to your waist, but it's so nice to wiggle your toes in the water to replace it when you're at the beach so that you continue to keep the sunburn down. Sunburn on the top of your feet can go to second and third degree burns within an hour, which is not true on the rest of your body. And so right off the bat, there's something that, I mean, I could drop the mic now and that advice alone.
Kim's going to take it from you.
Coming up on the Heart of Innovation right here on a KDOW, one more Foot Follies with Dr. David Alper. So don't go away.
She snuck another one in there on you, John.
I know, foot follies. I'm going to read another one coming back.
So
What's this
I
one?
ended up I ended up, so this one should be, I think he had, no, the third segment. So this one I think is another 8. And then the third segment is 5. And then the fourth segment is the longest at 9.
Okay, so I'll do 8 minutes. Okay.
I assume this is the type of conversation you wanted,
Oh,
Kim?
this is
This is
great.
perfect.
You know
This is
what I did
perfect.
though? I thought of you and I ended up putting some sunscreen. I wore sandals for the very first time over the weekend. Yeah, it's Monday. Confused. And I ended up putting sunscreen literally where on the toes and on the everything that was showing. Well, I didn't consider one issue that when you put on your sandals for the first time or flip-flops, you're wearing them all day, ulcers develop.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
ended up with an ulcer on my foot And then you're gonna love this. I ended up going in the hot tub yesterday. So I'm
Oh,
so
stop. You need to tell this story while we record. Okay, let's go. You got 8 minutes. Ready?
Right, a hot tub, which is basically a petri dish, so I,
All right.
I'm in so much trouble.
take it
Welcome
in.
back, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are continuing a fun and fragile, fancy, fearless conversation with Dr. David Alper, who's fiercely fighting for feet care.
This is
I
just
couldn't figure out
this
that.
is epic. This is epic.
I
Well,
know this
foot
was
care is
silly.
one word, so that's
But so, okay, during the break, Kim was going to share a story off air, and I said, no, you have to share this story on air because we were talking about
Executive decision.
using sunscreen and, sandals and the blisters that can occur. So Kim, you wore sandals for the first time this weekend?
I did. I mean, and that's a big issue is when you put on those sandals for the very first time or the flip-flops, there are little edges to them. And so if you're on your feet all day, especially in the hot sun, your feet start swelling. You don't think about it. I went to a baseball game with one of our patients, which you remember, Coach Tommy, and they had won the game.
Love
And
Coach Tommy. That's awesome.
and we love Coach Tommy. 85-year-old amputee who's just killing it with their team number one in state at the JC baseball. But needless to say, I'm trying to steer the conversation away from my own folly here. But I put the sunscreen on. I knew Dr. Alper would be very happy. Put the sunscreen on my toes, put the sunscreen on in every single crevice of where the sandal was not covering, which was a lot. And I set off. But I was on my feet most of the day cheering for Coach Tommy, and I was in the hot sun, my feet swelling a little bit. Well, guess what? I ended up with an ulcer because the edge of the sandal started digging into the top of my foot. So what do? I go home. Next morning, I wake up, starts bothering me a little bit. I go in the hot tub. I go meet my dad, and we go in the hot tub to bond on in the morning on the
But
weekend.
you forgot about the blister, right?
It hurt, but I forgot about it.
Because
I
again,
was
it's the farthest, appendage from your brain.
disconnect.
Okay.
Yep.
it's in the
And I
fourth.
went in there,
Honestly.
and it's just been getting worse. So what do? Go back in the hot tub again. And then I get in the shower, and it's completely red. I'm looking a little yellow in the middle. So no surprise, right? So what do?
Well, an
I'm a
internet
big
doctor
disappointment. You can
over
start there.
there. Yeah. So first of all kidding aside, you fortunately do not have PAD and
Yeah.
diabetes because that is exactly the type of thing that could lead to an ulceration, which could lead to an amputation, as well as
Yep.
a fairly nasty infection. So while we are speaking light of this is really the beginnings of a little horror show here. Um, I'm assuming that you're still young and healthy, and I'm assuming it's not all the way down to the bone. So I would treat it topically for a couple of days. I would keep it covered with a topical antibiotic. I would clean it with some peroxide,
No
no
kerosene.
iodine, please. But I would keep a piece of gauze, no Band-Aids. We don't like Band-Aids.
Oh,
We
interesting.
actually never like Band-Aids. Well, number one, the adhesive is too aggressive. And if you're going to wear a bandage for 5, 6 days, you're just going to irritate the skin that the Band-Aid's stuck to. The other thing is Band-Aids don't breathe. They're really good at keeping stuff out, but they're also really good at keeping stuff in. So a nice piece of gauze with a couple pieces of medical tape is a whole lot better. And you're going to monitor it a little bit for a while and see how it does. You might need an oral antibiotic. I don't have it in front of
So,
me.
so David, let me ask you, because I think this is a very worthwhile segue to spend some time with, because
Sure.
I think a lot of patients, to our earlier points, don't know when something's wrong or when it's just part of the healing process. So just what are like 3 or 4 things objectively that someone, when they see them on an ulcer, whether it's the toe or the heel, that in your mind are the alarms are going off, and you need to raise the flag and seek medical attention?
Well, that's an excellent question, John, because the reality is patients need to be advocates for themselves. And at the end of the day, they have their foot with them. I don't. So they're going to, their alarms are going to be the big ones. First and foremost is odor. If a wound has an odor to it, it's infected deeply because one of the things that happens, bacteria eats the skin, bacteria eats what's there, and it gives off gas. And the gas has an odor to it. So if you have an odor, and it's a fairly nasty odor, that's a reason to get to the doctor ASAP. That's not
How quickly can an odor occur? I mean,
within 24 hours.
okay, so you need to be diligent and
Yep.
really fiercely looking at. Okay.
And the odor could be on your sock. If you're wearing a sock and you don't have the wound covered and the fluid leaks out of the wound into the sock can give you the odor. I will tell you very often people come to me with wounds they didn't know they have on the bottom of their feet because they see a blood spot on their sock or they see an odor on their sock. And they don't feel it because of loss of sensation, what we call neuropathy. So odor is the first thing. Redness is the second thing. Now, obviously, a wound is going to be a little bit red, but if that redness is creeping away from the open area, if the redness is spreading, that's what we call the beginnings of cellulitis, which means the infection is taking hold of the healthy skin as well as the unhealthy skin. So as redness, now that doesn't happen within the first few hours. But if you wake up on Monday and you see this wound, then you wake up on Tuesday and the redness is the size of a quarter instead of a dime, that's the second thing. The third thing is that you want to see what's leaking out of the wound. Now, we all know that blisters has clear, sometimes clear bloody liquid. Clear is okay because clear is the way that the body protects itself. It's kind of an internal washing and a padding. But if you're seeing cloudy fluid coming out, white, creamy, pink white, that's infection because infection is actually eating the protein that's in that clear fluid that's trying to help healing.
What about a blister? Should you pop a blister?
Absolutely not. The
Oh, good
blister is the
question.
body's way of protecting. It creates an immediate cushion for itself. And again, that clear fluid is full of protein and a little bit of white blood cells, which help fight infection and heal. So the worst thing you can do is take that pin and hold a match to it, because that really sterilizes it well, and then poke it and then give it a good squeeze, like what is the Dr. Pimple Popper or whatever they call themselves. No, and by the way, blisters will basically pop by themselves. Do not, do not, do not rip that loose skin off. That skin is there for protection. And by the way, when you grab it, it's like a pull tab. You're just going to keep going all the way up to your knee, pulling that little piece of skin. Okay. So whatever's there, just leave it there. That's the reason your body put it there to begin with.
I don't know how I ever made it to age 49 because everything you said was the antithesis of what we did. I always remember my mom saying, "Oh, let's pop that." And we would take the match and we would,
Here we go. Oh, yeah.
sterilize. Wow.
And
Amazing. I
I'm
had no
here
idea.
just to kill people's fun and to make moms look bad. But then again, moms used to give you castor oil to keep you healthy, and there you go.
Well, speaking of killing fun, we've got to go to break, but stay with us. We'll be right back.
Perfect.
Yeah, no
Next.
sterilizing with matches, please, Kim. It's
Ah, no, that's it. I mean, and I hear it all the time. And we
Mhm.
have even Marie in the group that posted, and I thought you were going to have a connection when she popped some blister that she had. Um, I think we should also address calluses, but
Let's
would
do
love to
that.
hear, wouldn't that be interesting? Everyone gets the calluses. You had some interesting things to say in the group about a couple different kinds there.
Okay.
well, and
Perfect.
you remember, Kim, you showed me a patient a week or so ago that they had a sinus track right through the callus, John, that fortunately did not get down to bone, but was
Oh,
certainly
I was gonna
getting there.
say.
You know how you get that blood leak within the callus, where the callus suddenly starts absorbing the leak? You know, why?
Yeah.
Because they had a callus and they kept walking on it because they had neuropathy. And so the callus becomes the irritant.
Hmm.
It just breaks down the soft tissue underneath. It's like taking a rock and rubbing it on your skin.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
We take the approach, many people like to go barefoot and such in the summer, and especially around pools or at home, there are a lot of dangers. Maybe start with, you know.
Well, we've got to talk about barefoot, John, because we got to
All right.
stop from doing that. So
We got this
somehow
five
we keep
minutes,
that in
five
there.
minute segment.
Nope, this is oh yeah, you're right. Sorry.
I'll
So we're
talk
three.
quickly.
Look at
Right.
me. I'm like the producer now. Okay, here we
Yeah.
I
go.
love it.
Let's go. Ready? Three, two, one. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So we've covered the blister. Well, we covered the top, three things to look for. We've covered the blister. Don't pop it. Let it be. So now we're kind of, I think, morphing into people are walking around with bare feet, which in your mind is probably not a good idea ever.
Well, it fed my family and gave me a lot of business, John. So
That's
in that
true.
respect, it was wonderful. It's a dangerous world out there. Whether you have neuropathy, a loss of sensation, whether you have circulation, whether you have diabetes, or just walking around. I mean, I cannot tell you the things I have pulled out of the bottoms of people's feet.
Oh, do tell.
Well, everything from staples to thumbtacks to small toys to razor blades to paper clips, anything that's sharp. Because think about it. Number one, your average human being weighs 150 pounds, and most of us don't know the average human beings. Here's a fun fact you can take to parties. Every time a human being puts their foot down, 2 to 3 times your body weight goes through your foot. So a 150-pound person is putting their foot down with 300 to 500 pounds of pressure. Guess what? You step on a thumbtack, that thumbtack is going through your skin.
Well, and that's of the assumption that the person has normal architecture of or that,
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
then, right, as we get older, things change. I think I remember you telling me the foot shrinks or
No. Feet get bigger as you get older
they
because
elongate. Okay, so then,
right, because the ligaments that hold the bones together stretch. So
right,
they
so they
don't
elongate.
grow. You stop growing it a long time before, but things just splay out and flatten, which is why people's shoes are wind up being tight because they wear the same size 9 and 30 that they do at 60. But that's getting off on a tangent here. We'll have that
Oh,
for
I can bring us back. You brought down some PTSD back for me because I was one of those and with bare feet, and you won't believe what I stepped on. I'm going to hold out to tell you what I stepped on because I'll bring you back to the experience. I was in law school. I was so excited that I had, nailed my first case. And it
But
was
you went
like,
to law school? Did I
barefoot.
not?
so I ended up getting this first case that I was so excited about. And I could go out that night, which I didn't think I could. So I was excited to get out, grab my phone, call my friend, ran out into the living room and stepped on something. No clue what. All I knew was that I was in excruciating pain and I couldn't put my foot down. There was a clean hole the size of a pin and there was no blood. It was completely clean. Couldn't figure it out. My parents were getting ready to go out that night. I said, "Oh my God, I can't put my foot down. I don't know if I stepped on something." They look, I had Dr. Mom, Dr. Brother sitting there looking at they're not doctors, looking at my foot saying, "You're fine. Suck it up. Go out tonight. It's just a sting."
You've earned
And
it.
then
You've earned it.
it kept getting worse and the pain was excruciating. So my brother drives me to the emergency room, drops me off. They all think I'm a complete joke. I go into the clinic. They're looking. They're like, there shouldn't be anything in there because it probably just came out. It's probably fine. I'm like, then why would it hurt this bad? So they start poking around. They see nothing. They're about ready to go in to send me to X-ray because I was relentless. I'm like, I'm not leaving here. Something's in there. They found a 3/4 inch green toothpick
Oh,
all the
yeah.
way in there. Longest tweezers I'd ever seen. And they pulled it right out. They couldn't believe it. They were so shocked. They started bringing in all of their colleagues to take a look because the one weird part of it was we couldn't figure out why there was a little green around the edge. Well, we discovered that after.
And I was going to guess a toothpick. I must have taken 2 dozen toothpicks out of people's feet.
Are you serious?
Oh,
Is it
yeah.
always that clean? Wow.
Well, they're sharp, and yet
Yeah.
they break. And the skin naturally closes around it because that's what skin does. It tries to protect itself. You're not going to have a hole with an arrow that say, "Look here." I mean, these are the ways that the body protects itself. It's a dangerous world out there.
Yeah.
Barefoot, no, no, no. Here's another reason. Let's go back to the summertime. Okay. The sand is hot. The blacktop in the parking lot is really hot. If you have pets, I bet you watch out for the fact that tar gets up to 150 degrees in the sun all day long. So dogs do that little dance because you're making them walk through the parking lot and you're burning their soles. Well, your soles can burn too, and you can easily get a second or third degree burn. One of the things you should do, especially if you have PAD, especially if you have diabetes, before you get out of the car, you or somebody needs to touch the road or the sidewalk or the blacktop with the back of your hand, not the palm. That's too thick. With the back of your hand to see how hot it is. And if you pull your hand away, you don't want to be walking on it because you will burn the bottoms of your feet. The sand is the same thing. That white sand is sitting in the sun from 7 a.m. until 6 p.m. It's heating up. And this is a place where you can really get a burn. We've all seen people dance their way across the sand, and that's when they feel it. So these are the types of things that really can happen in the summer. I generally don't like flip-flops for a whole variety of reasons, but flip-flops are 1,000 times better than nothing.
Coming up right here on the Heart of Innovation, we're going to hear why he does not like flip-flops. That's next right here on the Heart of Innovation on KDOW. Don't go away.
So that was about an extra minute. So that was 6, if it matters.
Yeah, what I'll do is I won't do a
the next one's 9.
8 to 9, yeah.
8 to 9. All right, so we'll do 8 to 9.
Yeah, maybe do 8 because we took an extra minute.
Okay, what do you want to get in there, John? What do you want me to top to make sure we?
I'm just having fun listening. Well, I think we'll go to flip-flops, but then I think we should maybe talk about some maybe like positive things, like okay, like what?
Oh, sure.
How do you mitigate?
I agree with you. I think that's a great idea.
All right,
I think it's actually a great idea.
We'll figure it out. Okay, ready?
Ruin their day with flip-flops.
Yeah. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So, no bare feet, flip-flops you don't like, but they're okay. You know, people that are listening are probably thinking, can I go outside in the summer? Like, can I leave my house? So David.
Yeah, I'm a buzzkill, John.
We're just out there to help folks. But again, help us make that connection. Brain, foot, farthest part away. How do you bridge that gap for us?
Well, first and foremost, either you or somebody that loves you very, very much needs to look at your feet. And all kidding aside, it's not easy for people, especially as you get older, to see the bottoms of your feet or between your toes. So when you get back from the beach, it's a really good idea to just take a look at your feet. You know, did in fact you step on something, you cut something? You know, sea urchins. I've pulled out dozens and dozens of sea urchin needles from people stepping on them on the beach. You know, little crab claws, shells, broken shells. So it's really good to do that. You know, a foot massage is always a great idea. You know, again, preferably with someone who loves you dearly. Creaming your feet, especially after the beach. What a wonderful way to treat yourself with something nice. You know, pick a cream. I don't advertise any cream. Just the very act of putting some moisture on your feet, because of course your skin's going to dry out from being in the sun all day. So, you know, the massaging of it helps the circulation a little bit. If you want a recommendation for cream, make sure the cream has lanolin in it. That's the best moisturizing factor in a cream, and many, many of them do. But that's a great way. Just rub the tops and the bottoms. Never put cream between your toes. Don't want to put it there, because that's how you clog sweat pores. We got a whole bunch of sweat pores between your toes. But that type of thing is great.
What about people that put the cream on and then socks and they sleep in it?
That's fine. Great way to hydrate your skin. Great way to hydrate your skin. I mean, you know, and obviously a thin layer. Don't put half a bottle in there, for God's sake. But that actually is a great way to kind of seal it a little bit so that the cream gets absorbed. Because as your feet get a little warmer, your sweat pores open up and absorb all that cream. So it actually is a very good thing to do. However, here's my buzzkill again. Make sure those socks fit properly. If you take your socks off at the end of the day and you got a nice ring around your calf or around your ankle, because that thing is wicked tight, you're cutting off circulation. So you want to make sure that those socks fit properly, that they stay up with broad circulation. But otherwise, sleeping with socks and cream is something I've actually recommended to many people.
But
It's a,
not socks and sandals. You should never leave the house with socks and sandals
well,
on.
I mean, there are social
That's a
implications.
come on, Kim. That's a faux pas, right?
Maybe in Cambridge here in
You know what?
Massachusetts, but
We
otherwise,
had
no.
we were in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania, and an ambulance came for one of my parents, and it was a volunteer fire department. They showed up with flip-flops and socks. I literally could not believe it. I'm like, I can't even deal with that on a daily basis out on the streets, but then to have the volunteer fire department show up with socks and flip-flops,
Well,
it
they
just
were probably maybe they were at a picnic or something. Maybe it was
that could have been. That could have
I don't
been.
know, Kim, you're playing
So,
fashion police here. I don't. So
but
here's the best thing to wear on the beach.
yeah, I was gonna say because you're telling people, I mean, no
No,
flip-flops.
no, no. Water shoes.
Oh,
Water shoes
interesting.
are wonderful because
Yeah.
they're basically a neoprene sock. So they're thick enough to keep things from penetrating. They're stupid comfortable. They're waterproof. They're great. I personally wear them all. If you swim in a lake, your toes don't get into the muck on the bottom of the lake. Lord knows what that stuff is. You're not going to get turtles to bite your toes and things like that. Um, Water shoes are, and by the way, they look very stylish. It looks like you're a scuba diver or something.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Water shoes are absolutely the best thing you can wear on the beach. They'll even protect it from the parking lot. The only bad thing about water shoes is you don't get any support. You know what? You're running around the beach. Don't worry about support so much. Um,
Well, how about for people that walk around during the summer because it is hot
yep.
and you don't want closed toe shoes. So any suggestion for open
Yep.
toe shoes?
Absolutely. First and foremost, sandals are okay as long as they have a back strap and you use the back strap. Why? Because when you wear sandals that don't have a back strap, the only way they stay on is by gripping. You're grabbing that front of the shoe. So you're walking around like this. Well, that's not the way we're designed to walk. First of all, you're going to wind up getting a case of hammer toes, which is when the toe is cocked up, and people don't like that. Second of all, the tips of your toes are rubbing on the bottom of the shoe, and that skin is really nice and soft. It's going to go back to your little blistering, Kim, that you talked about. But if you use the back strap, the sandal stays on by itself. And so when you pick up your foot, the shoe comes with you. It's the same thing with Crocs. I actually don't have a problem with Crocs. Crocs have a nice little arch support.
I love Crocs.
They're great. But I bet, John, you take that strap that you think is decorative and you move it forward so you can scuff in and go. No, no, no.
All right, all
There's
right.
a
You got
reason
me.
that strap is there. So if you use the straps to keep them on, sandals are fine, Crocs are fine. And you're right, Kim. You don't want your feet to overheat either. So letting them breathe in the summertime is actually a great thing to do, as long as they're protected.
What about
Fantastic.
is there anything you can do to prevent some of the orthopedic deformation that occurs as we get older? I mean, because a lot of times I'll see patients and I don't know what the technical term is, but the toes will cross over each other and then they get a little ulcer between the two. So you have a spacer. Is there anything you can do? I mean, like, let's say, hopefully we've got younger people listening. What type of shoe should they be wearing now to prevent some of these things? Or are they not, can you not prevent them?
Well, of course, some women like to wear shoes that you can play soccer with a BB with. I mean, these things that are shaped like this, when your foot is shaped like this, doesn't really work very well. Now, you're going to a wedding, it's 2, 3 hours, you're going to kick them off half the time. I mean, of course, you can get away with it for a short period of time. But the reality is that feet get bigger as you get older. We've talked about that. And so you need to continually check the size of your feet and make sure that they fit properly. And just because they fit in 2015 doesn't mean they fit in 2025. An incredibly simple way to check is, and it sounds a little silly, but take a piece of paper, step on it, and trace your foot when you're standing. Because, of course, your feet splay out when you're going with full weight on your foot. Cut out your little foot and then hold it up to the bottom of the shoe that you're thinking of buying. Well, if the paper is bigger than the bottom of the shoe, guess what? The shoe's too small. You can also hold the bottom of the shoe just up to your foot if you want to, and do the same type of thing. But when shoes don't fit properly, John, when they're pushing on the
Hmm.
sides and in the front for 8, 9, 10 hours a day, with that 300 to 500 pounds I'm talking about, that's where those deformities come from.
And that's being generous.
That's being generous.
Well,
Now,
coming up right here on the Heart of Innovation, we'll have more with Dr. David Alper. So don't go away. Stay with us right here on KDOW.
God, I really am a buzzkill, aren't I?
Oh, this is great. Well, no, because
Oh, you are amazing.
the next show is just going to be like disasters that you've seen. So I can't wait.
Yeah. So we have 4 minutes
Oh my
here.
God.
4 minutes. Okay.
Yep.
So you can't have disasters with your heart because you can't see your heart, but you can certainly see disasters with, or when you do see them, it's way too late.
When we
But
see, yeah, when we see a heart disaster, it is, or leg, yeah, or a leg disaster. But okay, 4 minutes. So we'll just wrap
Wrap
things
up
up.
and go into the next. Yep.
Okay, ready? Three, two, one. Welcome back, everybody. 4 minutes left with our colleague and friend and podiatrist extraordinaire, Dr. Alper. So, David, any parting thoughts? What's up? What are two take homes that our listeners should walk away with?
number one, look at your feet. It's the only way you're going to guarantee you're going to catch anything. It's a nanosecond. Look at your feet, number one. Number two, protect your feet. Sunscreen, something to walk on the sand and on the roads when you're going from the car to the beach. I'd say those two things will keep your summer happy, healthy, fun. Avoid toe trauma. There's some alliteration for you. Um, and really, truly do enjoy yourself. You can enjoy yourself and have fun and not cause problems by just protecting those feet.
No, it's the best time to get out there and walk as medicine to improve your circulation naturally, of course. And there was a tip, and I can't remember if it was you or for some reason I keep thinking of vascular surgeon Dr. Jacqueline Majors, who was our vascular surgeon of the year through the Global PAD Association. One of you said that for especially for diabetics, to put a mirror on the floor in front of the toilet. It sounds really funny, but then every single time you go in to use the toilet, and it should be every day, right? You sit down and you put your feet up to check your feet, check the bottom of your feet.
That was definitely not me. I'm not a toilet doctor, but I have told
Who
people
is? Wait, do you know toilet
who
doctor?
is.
Okay.
Using a mirror to see the bottom of your feet
Yeah.
does work. I mean, obviously, be careful. Don't step on the mirror because that would be sad. But yes, if you live alone or if you live with somebody who's doesn't have a foot fetish or is shy, then yes, a mirror is a very good way to check the bottom of your feet. But here's kind of like part 2B. Just because you don't feel it doesn't mean it's not happening. People develop loss of sensation, loss of the ability to feel without necessarily knowing it. And so you could have a cut on the bottom of your foot. You could have something in your foot without knowing it. And that's why I started off by saying, look at your feet. And if you do see something wrong, find a colleague of mine. Do not break out the pin and start digging for God and glory. Yeah, I guarantee you're going to make things worse.
What about clipping your toenails?
Straight across, they're not like fingernails. Fingernails, you follow the curve of your finger. That is not the case with toenails. You don't want to go digging into the corners and then rip out the nail and a little piece of skin, and that's a keeper because that's a good one. You want to cut them straight across, and then you can file them a little bit in order to do that. But make sure that number one, you really can reach your feet properly, because once again, feet get farther away as you get older. And if you can't really reach them, you're going to cut yourself. I almost guarantee it. And to make sure that you use something that's frankly sharp enough to cut the nails. So that
And
you're
30 seconds, if you have PAD or
no,
diabetes,
then leave them
Medicare,
alone. Leave
Medicare,
them. You take them. Medicare and most
pedicure.
Oh, pedicure? I'm sorry, they just said Medicare. Well, let me finish the thought. Medicare and most insurances will cover a professional to cut your toenails so that it prevents problems. So you can have this covered by a physician. Pedicures for people with PAD and diabetes? No, 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 no. Pedicurists are wonderful human beings and they do a much prettier job than I do, but they are not trained to deal with the problems. And here's the reality. If God forbid they cut you, and they don't do it intentionally, but life happens, they have no tools whatsoever in their arsenal to deal with the cut that you have. And a cut to a PAD or diabetes patient can be a disaster.
And on that note, thank you so much, Dr. David Alper.
His last word is disaster.
That's right.
Right there. Good ending. No, you've inspired us all and we appreciate it. It's really important information. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us and have a great week.
Thanks very much, guys.
Awesome.
Okay, next,
right,
I'll get
next.
started.
You make me look so good. It's a disaster. And with that, we're done.
Yes.
Okay,
first
How
segment.
do I do this?
It's beautiful because we set you up, David. First
That's
segment,
absolutely true.
8:30 again.
8 minutes. Yep, 8, 5, and we'll just do 8 and 4. Okay. Here we go. In 3, 2. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. Today, we're stepping away from our usual serious discussions about peripheral artery disease, which is poor circulation in the legs, as well as diabetes, for what I can only describe as podiatry's greatest hits. We've convinced the legendary Dr. David Alper to open his case files and share the most shocking, bizarre, and sometimes unbelievable foot stories from his illustrious career. Dr. Alper has seen it all during the 30 plus years as a podiatrist, former president of the American Diabetes Association's New England Leadership Board, and member of the Board of Trustees of the American Podiatric Medical Association. The stories you're about to hear might make you laugh, cringe, or simply marvel at the remarkable resilience of the human foot and the creativity people display in injuring them. How is that for an intro, Dr. John Phillips?
That was, you know what, you have teed it up. You have, Dr. Alper has a large bat, and you are throwing him a softball that's going right up. He's gonna knock this out of the park. But before we do that, I am going to offer up my moment of inspiration, and I am calling on the immortal Dr. Seuss, who
I love this.
I forget which book it was. Maybe it's the one like "All the Places You'll Go." I think that all college grads should get. But he's quoted as saying, "You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes, you can steer yourself in any direction you choose." Dr. Alper, steer us away.
Well, talk about a tough act to follow. Dr. Seuss, my God. Though, please remember, he also wrote the foot book.
He did?
Oh, absolutely. It's a gift that I give to all of my pediatric patients that come to the office.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that. See, there we go. The foot book, okay.
It's called the foot book, and you can just imagine the feet that he drew, knowing the way that he built his characters. So, and good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for letting me come back and join you guys again. And I will tell you, very often people ask me why I went into the world of feet and podiatry. And one of the answers I give is you never know what's going to walk into the office every day. And the stories that I sometimes brought home from work that I couldn't believe myself, because patients are very entertaining and they don't mean to be necessarily, but everybody wants to help themselves. Sometimes the help comes in a variety of flavors. I can start you off with a real simple one that I think most people have suffered from droopy socks. It's something that doesn't terribly feel well. And the elastic going off on the socks after a while, and suddenly they're bunching up on the tops of your shoes. And we often tell people with circulation issues and with diabetes not to wear your socks too tight. You know, if you take off your sock and you have that deep gully around the middle of your calf because it's been cutting off the circulation, that's a problem. So a particular patient of mine who had a loss of sensation in their feet and her lower legs was tired of tripping over her socks and stuffing them up. And so her solution was to use a stapler, because after all, she couldn't feel it anyway. And she put in about 6 or 7 staples around each top of the sock. And I will tell you, it absolutely worked. Her
More
socks did
safe
not
for
fall down. She had 14 holes that eventually wound up becoming infected into her leg. And she kind of looked at me like I was the strange one, that I thought it was an odd thing to do and she didn't. But this was her solution for keeping her socks up. And I had to explain to her in extremely simple terms why it wasn't a very good idea.
So had she done it before, or was this the very first
Now,
time
this
and
was
it
the first time. She had tried rubber bands, but of course that's still left. And she did try some Elmer's glue, and she thought she was being smart because she knew that Elmer's glue wasn't a strong glue, that she could peel it off. But of course, it wasn't strong enough to keep your socks up.
So let me
okay,
ask you
let's talk
this.
about the Gorilla Glue though. I mean, we
Yeah.
don't want
Well,
to get
yes.
any ideas that even glue, because talk about tearing off the skin.
Well, yeah, but you also want to get your socks off, and I guess she knew enough not to do that.
So I'm going back to this, the toes are the farthest thing from the brain. And why do you think that it's acceptable for people to do things to their feet or let things fester on their toes that they wouldn't let fester on their hands? I mean, obviously people, you see my hands and you don't see my feet because they're covered. But is there something like wrong with us as a society, as individuals that we allow for this? Because I see patients who are intelligent and they will have a gully in their foot that has been festering for weeks, and it just doesn't sound any, there are no alarm bells that are going off. Like, what is it about the human psyche that says that blister and that toe that's black is okay?
Well, first and foremost, people truly believe your feet are supposed to hurt all the time. I mean,
Really?
that's just something that it's normal for your feet to hurt. And considering what we do to our feet in society, there's a teeny bit of truth to that. You have to remember that we were designed to run barefoot through the jungle. We weren't designed to walk on concrete surfaces and hardwood floors in leather boxes that we then tie wicked tight. Okay. We were designed to run on the sand. We were designed to run through mud and dirt and things like that. So people believe all the time that, of course, your feet hurt. They're supposed to hurt. So that's number one. Number two, out of sight, out of mind. It's locked inside. And of course, then there are people that have a loss of sensation, John, that they don't feel it. So very often, people will come to my office with a fairly nasty infection on the bottom of their foot that's draining all this stuff. And the only reason they know they have it is either they smell an odor or somebody else smells the odor and is like, God, Dad, your feet stink. What's going on? Or they see a spot on the bottom of their sock that obviously is a liquid and they knew they didn't step on something. So it's really a combination of people believing it's supposed to hurt. Pain is normal. And of course, it's not normal because pain's there to tell us something's wrong. But they also just don't think about it because and to your point, you got a sore on your hand. You don't want other people to see it. You don't want to go shaking hands and you're looking at it all day long or you're picking at it or whatever the case. And so that you'll run to take care of.
And I have quite a few patients that just have other priorities other than themselves. They always
Um,
put themselves last. And I see this a lot in women. We had a woman that I ended up picking up myself to encourage her to go see, actually, you all know Dr. John Laird over in Napa. And I went to her house and I knocked on her door. I said, "We're going. I know you have wounds." And she shows up outside in flip-flops
Mhm.
with a paper towel underneath her
mhm.
foot on the flip-flop. And I looked down, I was like, why do you have a paper towel? She's like, "Oh, because this wound is draining onto my foot." I said, "How long has it been draining?" "Oh, at least a month now." "Well, did
Yeah.
you think to go to the doctor sooner? Are you kidding me?" "No, I mean, I had this to do and this to do, and I had this board meeting and my grandkids and on and on and on." So coming up right here on the Heart of Innovation, we're going to have more follies such as this, and hopefully these stories will inspire you to better connect your brain and your feet.
Yeah.
Prove the connection. Stay with us right here on the Heart of Innovation on KDOW. Don't go away.
John, it's an excellent question. How many people come to you with chest pain for 2 months?
I mean, I mean, well, it
Well, but
depends.
I mean, you know what I'm saying.
Right, right, right. Very few. So David, I'm going to ask you, like, what is the craziest thing in your 3 decades that you saw that walked in, or that when they pulled that sock off and you said, whoa, I've never seen this before.
Can it be disgusting?
Yes, that's what we're here for. Let's
Okay.
bring it back. 8 minutes. Here we go. Ready? Three, two, one. Welcome back, everybody. And we are entering the zone of bizarre now on this show with Dr. David Alper, now retired podiatrist, correct? So, David, 30 plus years in practice. During the break, I had asked you, and so now you're prepping. What is the strangest thing that you have ever seen in the clinic after they pulled their sock off and you said, maybe we're at a loss for words?
I had a patient who had work boots. Work boots are expensive. He needed the work boots for work. He had worn a hole in the bottom of one of his shoes, and so he stuffed it with newspaper in order to keep liquid and stuff out of there. You would think he would change the newspaper every day, but such was not the case. So, of course, the bottom of the newspaper was getting wet with God knows what he was stepping on. And he comes into my office saying that his feet are itching and burning and everything else. And he takes off his shoe, and all these bugs start crawling out of the shoe and crawling up his skin. Why? Because he made a lovely home for all these bugs inside a wet, newspaper-filled shoe. And the reason he didn't come to me too quick, he says, well, Doc, I've read about maggots and things like that cleaning wounds. So I figured, they weren't going to hurt it. So I'd get around to it when I did. I gave him a sponge with some liquid iodine,
Wow.
and I sent him into the bathroom. And I said, I am not coming within 100 feet of that foot until you scrub your foot. And I'm not asking my nurse to do it. And I sure as heck am not doing it. You come back when this foot is clean, or at least as clean as it could be. And the nurse gave him a garbage bag to do over because they didn't want the bugs all over the office. I didn't even ask what his home was like.
Jeez.
That's something that is stuck in my memory for a very long time.
I
I would
had,
imagine
yeah.
that was probably a pretty big cleaning problem because you ended up probably having to especially clean the room and make sure all the bugs were cleaned up.
Well, he walked
And then
through my
also
waiting room. He walked down the hall. Oh yeah, he just left this little trail of vermin.
bugs. Wow.
It's
And I remember you told me another weird case where there was a misdiagnosis. People thought it was gangrene, but instead it was.
Well, that was that was actually funny, and it was a very happy ending. That this poor woman who did have circulation issues went to the doctor with feet that were black, and they were black above her ankles. And everybody's looking like, oh my God, what's going on? I've never seen anything like this. And she went to her primary physician, which, in all fairness, they don't see a lot of deep circulation issues, especially 2, 3 permeations down the road of visits. And fortunately, they sent her over to me. And I say that because I'm saying, I've never seen a color like this before. Well, she wears black socks and she sweats a lot and XYZ. And it was the dye from her socks that just leached onto the skin. And a little bit of iodine and a little bit of acetone, and it came right off. And I was a miracle worker. It's like, you're healed. Thank you very much. Had trouble billing Medicare for that, John, but that was another story.
Have you seen, because I saw a patient that because people scratch, you'll notice, particularly if they have like cats,
Yep.
and they'll let the dog, like, and I saw a gentleman who he had an ulcer and the dog was licking it.
Yep.
And he didn't feel it. And then the dog started eating the
Dead
foot.
skin. Yeah.
And so he showed up to our emergency room and the tendons were exposed. And not to make light of it, but the admitting or the ER physician called us and said, is there anything you guys can do here? And I looked at it and I said, this is a major amputation right here. I mean, like, this is crazy, but the dog was licking it. He thought the dog was cleaning it, and then the dog started eating it.
I cannot tell you how
That's a
many
true
times
story.
no, I cannot tell you how many times in 30 years I had people tell me that their dog was keeping the wound clean because they had heard so many times that dogs' mouths are cleaner than human mouths. And by the way, the dog licks their wounds. And I was like, yeah, guess what else dogs
Yeah, I
lick?
was going to say dog
Go
licks
there.
other things.
You know, I mean, people believe this. Unfortunately, it is human nature, and people do want to help themselves, but it is human nature for people to listen to strangers
Yeah.
or Dr. Google or bathroom walls or something, as opposed to the physician that they waited 6 weeks to get the appointment with. And so they do some really crazy things. People have soaked their feet in gasoline and kerosene and bleach and lye. People rub mayonnaise on their feet. You know,
I had one gentleman that was, I think it was like red or some vinegar of some sort, and it was like this homemade concoction that had been passed down through generations, and all it really did was just kind of irritate the skin. And I'm
yeah,
thinking, wow. There was a case similar to the bug one that you had said where my partner, there was a gentleman that was admitted to the hospital, and my partner sent him down for an angiogram based on some abnormal testing, and his foot was wrapped. And so I always take the bandage down because in case we have to get access in the foot or whatever, I unwrap this thing and maggots just come flying out of it. And my nurse, when he was done doing, I thought he was going to pass out. And then basically we collected the maggots in a bowl and cleaned it and said, okay, I think we've got to get this cleaned up a little bit here before we're going to do any procedure. But they were just, I mean, cleaning the wound, but the wound had been too far gone. And but
oh yeah.
the maggots falling onto my shoes, I thought, oh boy, this is a low
And I
point.
bet you he hadn't changed the bandage in like a week
No,
or
but it was in the hospital. No,
oh, in the hospital.
he didn't change. I forget what happened. They forgot to change the bandage.
Yeah.
You know, you get a little fly and the egg and then the larva and
That's
boom,
all that you need. You know,
there you
it's
go.
protein. You
Yeah.
know, stuff that leaks out of a wound, for those of you out there that don't know this, what leaks out of a wound or the fluid in a blister is very rich in protein because that's how the body tries to heal things. Well, guess what? Bugs love protein too. And so they'll come along with a bandage soaked with this stuff, and it's a restaurant to them. They'll eat their way to happy. And
And
they'll
just so our listeners know, obviously we're not advocating for bugs as
no,
a
no,
source of
please.
protein.
No, you shouldn't be doing any of this stuff that we do. Please.
No, and you don't. If
Okay.
you have a wound, I mean, I've seen squeaky clean wounds that maggots have. Oh, just done a beautiful job.
Yeah, no, I know.
Oh,
It doesn't
absolutely.
mean you go and find. I had a patient that said, you know what, I am going to go and find a dead animal on the freeway and I'm going to stick my foot out. And I was like, absolutely not. No, 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 no,
Really
no.
good idea.
Oh, really? Yeah,
And use the rest
exactly.
of the roadkill for dinner. I mean, why not? As long as you're out there.
And
Um,
coming up right here on the Heart of Innovation. On that note, if you're still with us and you want to continue with
Highly
these
unlikely,
incredible
but
foot qualities, stay with us right here on the Heart of Innovation on KDOW. Don't go away.
so, John, let's talk about neuropathy a little bit so
okay,
that you understand a little more, because I'm
sure.
sure there's quite a few people out there, and I've got a couple of great stories about
Good.
neuropathy.
All
Um,
right, 5 minutes. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back, everybody. And for the 4 people that are still listening, we appreciate it because if you paid attention to that segment ahead before, it was a little bit earth shattering and bone chilling. But in all seriousness, at least I've experienced multiple times when I've seen a patient with pretty significant diabetes who have peripheral neuropathy. They take their shoe off and something falls out. A couple weeks ago, it was a penny. I've seen hair, the little hair things that, I mean, folks just don't know. David, I would imagine you have seen some strange things that have come out of people's shoes when they take off their shoe to show their
well,
regular.
you're absolutely right, John. And of course, nobody does this intentionally. For people that don't have neuropathy, and by the way, neuropathy can come from PAD as well, because nerves, like every other tissue, needs to be fed with blood. That blood's not getting down there, and the nerves can die as well too. So it's not just a diabetes thing. The strangest one I had is somebody came in with a foot and a lower, that looked like a cat had used it for as a scratching post. Must have been 100 scratches on it. Had no idea what had happened here. The guy tells me he's got a couple of young children, and the kids were on the floor one day playing with jacks. Remember those little
Mhm.
metal things with, the ball you bounce? One of the jacks wound up in his shoe, and he put his shoe on, having no idea the jack was in there because he had full neuropathy. He had a complete loss of sensation and walked around like that for 4 or 5 days with this thing scratching, scratching, scratching his foot. And again, as I said earlier, the only reason that he knew that there was a problem is he saw blood on his sock. And he suddenly started to see these scratches around his foot. It is very difficult for people to appreciate what a loss of sensation is. But take the other end. How many of your listeners have ever stepped on a Lego? I mean, that's one of the three most painful things on the planet. We have the same number of nerve endings in the bottoms of our feet that we do in our hands. And we know how sensitive the tips of our fingers are. The bottom of your foot is the same way. So this type of loss of sensation, this type of scratching, but unfortunately, people also assume that, well, I don't feel it, so it's okay. So the number of people I've had come in with scratches from their cats that get ragingly infected. And I'm like, Mrs. Jones, why do you keep letting the cat do this? Well, the cat likes it and it's giving me attention and it doesn't really hurt. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what else do cats scratch? How about kitty litter? What happens in kitty litter? And they go from that to scratching your skin and creating an open wound.
I have to derail a little bit since you are talking about cats, because we talked about dogs licking. I heard that cats licking the wound are more dangerous, or there's a bacteria that is more dangerous for wounds than even with dogs, because that's supposedly rare, but we had a patient that had a cat, and the doctor told us that it was the cat had led to this infection.
I've never heard that.
I mean, but in
So,
general, no animal or actually nothing with a tongue should be licking these
well,
wounds.
yes,
Fair enough.
that is a good rule to live by.
There we go. See,
In the
people are
top,
learning stuff every day here.
yeah, that's why they tune in.
Exactly.
Like I said, cats' claws are full of aside from the fact they walk around the planet, they're digging through a litter box, which is just carrying along things you just don't want in a wound. But they're also scratching away at your leg is just not really a great thing to be doing that with. And by the way, people, please don't use things like wire hair brushes or files or rasps to get at your skin when it itches. And Lord knows, do not use sandpaper or a belt sander. Yes, I had somebody use a belt sander on a calluses on your
Yeah.
heel.
Yep.
You
I've
got to
had
be
that.
kidding me.
We
I've had
know
that
those
too.
calluses get thick. They don't get that thick. And that's kind of an awkward position to be in to begin with. But it says nowhere on the belt sander to keep it off your skin because I think they give you the benefit of the doubt that you know that. But yeah, actually more than one, John.
I've seen that too.
And
Oh, I would
Dremel,
love
by
to
the way.
hear any more. Do you have any more power tool stories? Hold on to that thought. Let's share some more of those. Coming up next, right here on the Heart of Innovation on KDOW. Don't go away.
Dremel tools are a big thing. People, nice small head. Um, and then, of course, what people use to cut their toenails. You really don't want to know that.
Oh, let's go
I do.
there.
Let's go there.
Okay, we
Ready?
have we have a 9 minute segment. Are there any other topics that we should hit in the 9 minutes to draw out your best stories?
Well, I've had more than my share of people with the shoes on the wrong feet that don't notice. I mean, which just
What
causes,
about a charcoal foot that is just completely have you like just fallen apart? I mean, do you see people come in where the foot is just the bones are just falling apart?
well, yeah, but I mean, that's not something they cause themselves, of course. I mean, that's just a
True.
deformity that has
Oh
just
yeah.
gone, you know,
Yeah.
rampant. more than
Yeah.
anything else. I mean, I've seen hammer toe. I mean, we've all seen feet where like the toes are, you're wishing luck permanently.
Oh,
They're all crossed.
yes. How about how people have tried to straighten their toes or get rid of bunions? That would be interesting.
Oh my God. Okay, I can do that.
All right, here we go.
Start
Eight
with,
minutes.
yeah, and we'll do power tools first because he has some fun with the Dremels.
All right, here we go. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Continuing our uplifting conversation with Dr. Alper and some of the pitfalls that he's seen in his 30 plus years as a podiatrist. Before we went to break, we were kind of touching on the use of power tools for calluses. I've seen that. I've seen the Dremel tool. But, you know, I guess it knows no bounds sometimes what people will do to a callus. So what type of apparatus have you seen, David, that's the strangest with respect to a power tool and a callus?
Well, power tool and a callus. I mean, people will start off with a mat knife or a razor blade,
Okay. Yeah.
anything sharp that they can try to shave it with. I've seen people try to use tin snips to try to nip off the dead skin. And of course, especially when you're not a professional, being able to tell where the dead skin ends and the live skin begins can be a little tricky as far as that goes. I've seen people use battery acid because that's pretty strong to try to, you know, work it off a little bit. Because after all, they wiped it on and they wiped it right off, John. So, I mean, how much could it possibly burn? Um,
Drano.
no, I haven't seen Drano. I will say that much. But anything that files, rasps, hand files, but it's also the toenails. So I've seen hacksaws, and I've seen, again, the tin snips come out, or it's just those little rotary saws to try to cut through. And there's no question in my mind that toenails can be pretty hard. I mean, using your hands when you're in the position I am, rather than the fact that it's your foot, can be a difficult thing to do. But I've never seen a power tool with the American Medical Association seal of approval on it. So, please, ladies and gentlemen, do not go into your wood shop and look for things to treat your feet. I don't go there to find tools to treat you. You probably shouldn't be doing the same type of thing. Digging into the corners. So you'll use an awl. You won't use a regular screwdriver because that's too flat. But a Phillips screwdriver comes to a point, so you can try to get in there with that a little bit, or try to dig out a little bit of the fungus from the end of the nail by getting in there with a Phillips screwdriver, and of course ripping
Does that work?
skin underneath. Well, it does that and more as far as that goes. So yeah, people are incredibly imaginative, and one would say resourceful if it didn't cause the trauma that it did.
I would imagine you would see a lot of creativity with bunions and hammer toes, with people trying to straighten them out.
You do. The simplest thing I heard is that somebody had their wife, a bunion, of course, for those of you that don't know, is when your big toe swings over to the side and you get kind of a large bulge on the side of your foot. Well, the problem is that people think the bulge is what's causing the toe to drift over, and it's actually the opposite. As your toe drifts over, there isn't as much room for the bone inside your foot, what's called the metatarsal, and so that leans out. So the logic is, if you hold the toe straight, you can then whack that thing back into place. And so a gentleman had his wife hold the big toe and the rest of the toes in the proper position, while his son took a 5-pound sledgehammer and whacked the side of his foot. Fortunately, I know how to treat fractures, and so we were able to put that foot back together again.
Yikes.
But the family that treats together heals together.
Well, you know what? Probably the son was just getting back for dad for pulling his teeth out when he was a kid. He's like, all right, we can fix this.
Hey, how often do you get to take a sledgehammer to your dad, with his permission?
Jeez Louise.
So that's one way of doing it, Kim. I've had people jam so many things between their toes to just try to keep it across. It doesn't work. The only way to straighten a toe out that drifts is surgery. And here is Dr. Alper's rule number one about bunions. If it doesn't hurt, leave it alone. Because you can't do better than no pain. You can definitely do worse than no pain. And yes, it's ugly. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Feet are ugly. They are not the most attractive part of the human body. And if you walk into a room and the first thing they notice is your feet, boy, you have some problems. Because usually you have a beautiful face, and that's kind of what people are looking at. So
And
please,
bunion surgery is not an easy, I mean, like that's quite a bit of a recovery, isn't it?
it's a 6 to 8 week recovery. It's extremely successful. I did at least 1,500 bunion surgeries in my career, and I didn't regret one of them because I did render comfort and I did straighten things out. But these were people that were having pain, that were having difficulty doing the things that they wanted to do and living a normal life. And certainly surgery is appropriate in this case. But to your point, John, any surgery is not innocuous. There's a healing time, there's a downtime, there's always a chance of infection and other things like that. So you need to go into surgery with your eyes open. I know we're drifting off topic a little bit, but the point of the story is that while on the one hand, don't ignore pain. Number two, if you truly aren't having pain and you have normal sensation in your feet, it's probably okay, even if it looks a little wonky. So doing things like tying rubber bands around your toe and then around your ankle to pull your toe over, it's just going to cut off the circulation in your toe and your ankle. So please don't do that. That's kind of a bad thing to do. And shoving increasingly larger amounts of newspaper or sponges or God knows what between your toes and then trying to put your shoes on, not a real great idea either. And leave the sledgehammer for those that know how to break concrete.
Have you had any sort of weird um, prosthetic stories, for the feet? For example, we had a patient that sent me a picture. She was so excited. She had a toe amputation and she ended up, it was Halloween, going around the Halloween store and getting one of those rubber fingers and kind of cutting it off and then like using rubber band to put it around her heel to hold it on and put it in her
Like a fake
sandal.
nose.
Yeah.
For somebody who doesn't have a nose.
Yeah.
I have had people use different things to fill the space inside the shoe. I cannot honestly say I've ever had anybody try to create a fake toe to walk barefoot. I think that would be quite an accomplishment. But I've had people put hot dogs in there because a hot dog is kind of like the size, not the whole hot dog, of course, just the length of a toe hot dog. Because after all, a hot dog is shaped kind of like a toe if you think about it.
Did they eat it?
Don't.
John, dietary issues are just not underneath the podiatrist purview. Um, but
What about, have you
hot
ever had
dogs,
anyone cut all their like rip their toenails off?
oh yeah, oh absolutely. You know who does that is ballerinas. Ballerinas have continuously ingrown toenails, just because if you think of the fact that they're dancing on the points of their feet, and of course, we're not designed as human beings to put the body weight through the points. And so I actually was the podiatrist for the Kansas City Ballet when I was a resident. And I cannot tell you how many times I treated infected ingrown toenails. And I would actually take their toenails off for the benefit of their profession. And you can live a normal life without a toenail. However, I know what I'm doing, and I have this wonderful invention called Novocaine, which makes it a little nicer. But they either didn't want to make their copay or they didn't have time to go out. And so they'll grab a needle nose plier and get underneath and just rip their toenail off.
Oh,
Okay.
that's worse than ripping off a Band-Aid. I mean,
I think they tend to do that when they interrogate you during wars to find out where the secret map is or something
Yeah.
like
Yeah. It's like
that.
waterboarding.
Exactly.
and then
Um,
do they end up coming to you right afterwards anyway because of a complication from tearing it off with pliers?
well, between performances, sure, because now it's bleeding. I mean, your nails have a lot of blood underneath there. So, oh yeah, they'll go through something like that.
I
Um,
love this. On that note, if you're still with us
yeah.
after all of this, we still have one more segment. So stay with us right here on the Heart of Innovation on KDOW. Don't go away. Okay, four
Good stuff.
minutes.
I have a
Um,
quick military story I can tell.
oh, we like that. Yeah.
Talking about taking toenails. Um,
Okay.
All right. Let's hear it.
Okay.
Okay, in three, two,
Three,
go
two,
ahead.
one. Welcome back, everybody. Now, for the two people that are still listening, we are going to pivot to military stories of, David, I have no idea where this is going. We're talking about ripping off toenails with players. Somehow waterboarding got mentioned. So what do you have for us here?
So I was very fortunate to do an internship at Bethesda Naval Hospital. And for those of you that don't know, the Navy provides medical care for the Marines as well. So we were taking care of the Navy and the Marine soldiers. And I had a Marine come in full gear with an infected ingrown toenail, probably from hiking, God knows what. And it was supposed to be treated. Nothing wrong with that. So he hops into my exam chair, and I'm wet behind the ears. I'm still a student as an internship. And I said to him, okay, soldier, I'm going to take off part of your nail, allow it to heal. And he was perfectly fine with that. So I said, let me, get some Novocaine for you. And no, thank you, sir. Because of course he treated me with the respect of the physician. And I said, soldier, this is going to hurt. You really want the Novocaine. It's not that big a deal. And the shot really doesn't hurt that much. No, thank you, sir. Don't need any Novocaine. And he was insistent that as a tough Marine, he was going to tough it out. And you know what? Wasn't going to hurt me. So I took that infected toenail off with no Novocaine. He sat in the chair. I'm sure he had 3 holes in his tongue from biting through it. And he almost ripped the arms off my exam chair, but by God, I'm sure he went back to the barracks and
Told the
bragged to
boys.
everybody that he did it.
Yep, told the boys.
Now, the flip side to that is when I was a resident, I did my residency in Kansas City, Kansas, and Kansas City, Missouri, because, of course, both sides of the street. And one of the rotations we had, believe it or not, was at Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary with some unusual patients. And apparently, one of the things that prison, because these are lifers, they don't get out, they don't do anything. Some of these guys, 23 hours in a cell. And apparently, one of the things that they do is they rip off one of their own toenails because that allows them to go to the clinic, which breaks up the monotony of life. And I had one of the guys in there that's exactly what he did, that he figured out a way to rip off his toenails so he was able to come see me so that it wasn't a boring day.
Well, this has
Wow.
certainly not been a boring conversation. I'll say that.
It's like, yeah,
Seriously.
become a podiatrist, see the world. What can I
That's right, exactly.
I mean, literally, this has been just a whole bowl full of lessons of what not to do to your feet.
Yeah.
So if you were going to, I think we should put John on the spot. If you were going to have all the takeaways, what do you think? No kerosene, no bleach, no pliers to rip off the toenails.
I think it's simple. Just leave your foot care to a professional.
Well, you leave your heart conditions to a professional. Leaving your
Yeah.
feet is
I
probably a
mean, I
good idea.
think just don't get off of Google. Go see somebody who knows what they're doing. And please, for the love of God, don't let anything with the tongue lick a wound. Lick a wound anywhere, frankly.
That should
And
be
can
like
I
on a
make
pillow somewhere.
one more plea in 30 seconds? My biggest pet peeve is I can't believe that when ladies have a gangrenous foot, they are still going to get a pedicure and painting their nails.
I've seen it
That's
too.
probably a big
All
no-no.
about keeping up, appearances,
I
despite
guess
the.
so.
Although, I will say this, like when I see an elderly person, like for example, I had a 90-year-old woman come in to see me, and she was having some claudication issues, and her toenails they were meticulously painted. I thought, okay, this person, like they're getting up, they're getting their nails painted. Like, okay, this is pretty good. This is good protoplasm. I think I can work with this. So I am a little biased there. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, it's just when they're gangrenous, it just
That's
I,
true.
I I just wonder if they shouldn't. But it is an indication also in your case that maybe they're trying to take good care of their feet.
Exactly.
Well, it's a
Exactly.
combination of denial and self-awareness, because I've seen that too. I mean, I've also taken toenails off and people painted their skin because they wanted to have kind of a semi-fake toenail there.
Okay.
You don't even want to get into tattooing of the feet. That's a whole other segment.
I think I'm good.
I think that's a great
That's
cliffhanger for another show. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Alper. We really appreciate you. And we're going to have to, I guess, have you back again to talk about tattooing the feet.
Happy to come anytime. Thank you
Take
so
care,
much.
everybody. Take care.
If you actually did it right now, you could actually, I could edit it into the online version for later if you wanted.
I had a woman come in, first time I ever met her, takes her shoes and socks up. I don't remember what she was in for. And the name Fred was tattooed on the bottom of her foot. Now, that strikes me as one of the more painful places to get a tattoo for several reasons, but who knows? So in the conversation of meeting, and obviously that wasn't what she was in for, but I said, boy, this must be a deep, deep love for you to put your boyfriend's name or husband's name on the bottom of your foot. I hate him. He's an effing son of a bitch. I hope a truck hits him. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What's the story with the tattoo? Because every time I take a step, I'm walking on his name.
Yep, there you go.
That's a deep hate. That
Well,
is
that
a
really is.
deep hate.
Yeah, that's a woman you don't want to cross.
No, don't piss
No,
this woman off.
not at all. Thank you so much,
Oh yeah.
Dr. Alper. That was
Oh no,
amazing.
this was fabulous, guys. Thank you
Good
so
work.
much.
Good work. It was
John,
fun.
I'll do this every week with you.